And now, California, here we come. That's the focus of tonight's angle. All right, it's not even been, 48 hours since we learned that Donald Trump blew the doors off the presidential race. And our so-called experts, they kind of remain in a suspended state of shock. Shocked by President Trump's strength across pretty much all demographic groups.
Donald Trump has, in 2024, put together a working class coalition of white working class voters and working class voters of people of color.
The Democrats are in danger of becoming a regional coastal party.
A curious visit by Donald Trump to the South Bronx to have a rally back in May. And a lot of people who didn't get it said, what's he doing there? Well, it's clear what he was doing. He was sending the message to people there, to Latino Americans, to Black Americans, that I see you, I hear you, I care about you.
Well, not only did Trump grow his support among Hispanics, among young people, African-American men, he grew his support in deep blue states that he lost. In New York, where Trump lost by almost 23 points in 2020, on Tuesday, he cut that margin in half. And then in New Jersey in 2020, and we saw a little bit of this with that governor's race that was so close, Trump lost by a whopping 16 points to Biden, but this time, he came within 5 points of Harris. This is incredibly encouraging for Republicans. Now, basically the same story in Illinois, where Trump also cut his deficit there by about a half. So as these numbers settle in, you have to wonder, do Democrats or their informal advisors, and they recognize some of the problems, you could hear that in those clips that we played, but do they really show signs of understanding what substantively went wrong?
Trump was very good at sending cultural signals. Virtually every Democrat I've talked to has said, we cannot win if our people are not on these podcasts, these bro podcasts.
They're on TikTok, and whether it's teenagers or college kids or people in their 20s, and Donald Trump is a superstar.
We gotta watch this.
And it's not about politics. It's not about policy. It's about a pop cultural movement.
Again, I don't want to beat up on people who lost this race, but that's a total misreading of the situation. The only reason Trump could have those moments, those viral moments, is because he, in fact, offered the right policies. And he had a fantastic record on inflation, on wages, and the border. And as for sending cultural signals, well, that wasn't it either. He spoke to the real concerns of people. He didn't just say, I care about you. He spoke to their concerns, and then he took it a step further because he advanced common sense solutions. Boys shouldn't be in girls' sports. DEI is unfair and unworkable. Your taxes are too high. The jobs you're getting aren't paying you enough. I'll change all that. That was clear. But, of course, messaging is important. But what the Democrats had was not a comms problem. Remember, that's what the Biden-Harris people kept thinking over the last 2 years. If we only have a better comms strategy, that was never it. It was always the policies that were terrible. The Biden and Harris wrecked the economy. They flung open the border. They did it on purpose. Hispanics understood what was going on. Young people saw what was going on. And more women recognized all of this than the Democrats ever predicted they would. Yet there is little to no recognition, still expressed over the past 2 days, of how calamitous all of this was to working people. By the way, the working people of all backgrounds who began to flee their party, their Democrat Party in Wisconsin and Michigan, Pennsylvania, and beyond. Oh, and by the way, their messaging on abortion, how much did we hear about abortion over the past 5 months? It was totally off, and frankly, in the end, I think a lot of women were insulted by it.
The question about whether or not women were going to come out for Kamala Harris,
Right.
whether or not men were going to come out for Kamala Harris in a post-Roe world on that issue. And if you just look at, for example, suburban women, they, according to the national polls, they went for Trump.
Yeah, well, guess what? Women actually, see the grocery bills. Women understand the heating oil costs in the winter. They get all that. They see the problem with migrant crime. They're not one-issue voters. They never have been. We tried to warn the Democrats. They didn't listen to us. Now, the stark reality for them is a huge opportunity for Republicans. So after 3.5 years of high prices, the open border, enthusiasm for the Democrats, I mean, it's just astounding. It took a major hit across the whole country. And meanwhile, Trump grew his support for the GOP everywhere, from Brooklyn to Philadelphia to Cook County in Illinois. So here's an idea. When Trump, realized finally, okay, I won this thing, and now we know he won, here's the next tour. I know they're tired of tours and rallies maybe, but why not go to the major blue cities that he never really had the chance to visit during the campaign? Go to Boston, go to San Francisco, go to LA, go to Chicago, spend some time in Seattle, maybe even Portland, Oregon. Go to places like that. Go there with all this momentum and the wind he has at his back and make it very clear that he loves those cities. He loves the people of those cities, even if they didn't support him. And he's proud to be their president. And that he's going to do everything possible to serve them and their interests during his time in office. Those cities have to be rebuilt. They have to be rethought. And he's the perfect person to do that. And he should, yes, and I know everyone always says I'm crazy when I say this, but he should make a big play for California. Where, by the way, we heard today that Gavin Newsom is setting the stage for massive resistance against the Trump agenda. Well, we know that's all about Gavin in 2028. But the truth is, well, Gav's party lost support in 2024, even in California. Because in 2020, Trump got 34.3% of the vote there. And as of now, 56% of the vote there counted. He has 40% of the vote. So I think the time has come to really go after the vote in California in a common sense, populist, attractive way. Bring it home. Bring California back to the GOP. That's where it belongs. I'd send Elon Musk out there. I'd send Vance out there, spend lots of time, lots of energy talking to Californians, especially to the growing Hispanic voters in Southern California. And the 2028 Olympics are going to be out there, so it gives you a great chance. And while we're at it, why not have the 2028 convention out there? I know, we just finished this race. I know. I'm thinking of 2028. Because the more money the Democrats spend to defend California, the less they're going to have to create havoc for good candidates in the rest of the country. So Republicans have nothing to lose and everything to gain by making an all-out effort to flip California. And my friends, it's time to end the division between the red states and the blue states. Bring the country together, and if anyone can do this, Trump can. And that's the angle.
Somebody grab a mop. Tears are flooding the swamp.
I'm sure I'll come up with something to make me feel good again. But right now, today, it's hard. I'll be honest with you. And the hardest thing is that I look across this country and tens of millions of people fell for this, and it's depressing. I'll snap out of it, but I'm in a very, very dark tunnel right now.
It's not just Carville. The men of the party, Doug and Timmy, were a little choked up yesterday when Kamala conceded. And Nancy Pelosi, after getting scolded by Donna Brazile, left the party pouting. Little remorse over the Kunets. You lost an election and a friend. But that friend is the only Democrat smiling. His name's Joe Biden. Look at the grin. He's the happiest he's looked in years. Is that the guy whose VP just lost to Hitler? Or is that the guy who's saying, I told you so?
I know it's a difficult time. You're hurting. I hear you and I see you. But don't forget all that we accomplished. It's been a historic presidency. Not because I'm president, because what we've done, what you've done. A presidency for all Americans.
Biden's reminding Democrats what they could have had. It's like when your girlfriend breaks up with you for another guy and then the other guy dumps her. See, babe, you didn't know how good you had it. Remember, Biden knew she couldn't win. When Democrats were trying to wax him, he was handing them polls like, guys, she's going to get crushed, look. But they didn't listen. So on the way out the door, he endorsed her. So they had to fall in line. She was a woman of color. What were the Democrats supposed to do? He endorsed a hand grenade, pulled the pin, watch it blow up in November. Biden still thinks he could have won.
Does President Biden believe he could have won if he stayed in this race?
President Biden believes that he made the right decision when he decided to step aside and immediately endorsed the vice president.
Binder knows what Biden did here. Oh, you don't want me? You can have her. Don't say I didn't warn you. Axios says Democrats have started clawing each other's eyes out. One Democrat's fuming that no one stopped Biden sooner, telling NBC, how the hell did we not deal with this problem? He's 80 years old. He was supposed to be a one-termer. The man could barely speak and actually be coherent. It was too late, and we knew we had a Biden problem this time last year. The party knew it, and people truly were not honest. Bloomberg says it probably wasn't great to cover up President Joe Biden's infirmities until they became undeniable on live TV. Democrats are also raging at Biden's arrogance, leaking all over the place. He shouldn't have run. This is no time to pull punches or be concerned about anybody's feelings. He and his staff have done an enormous amount of damage to this country, one Democrat said. And he's a good man who can be proud of his accomplishments, but his legacy is in tatters.
If he had dropped out earlier, there would have been a messy primary. I think you can look at the Harris folks who say that she didn't have enough time to run, but there are others who say this was actually the best scenario for her.
I was going to say, I think a lot of
time,
people probably thought she would have lost a primary.
Well, not just that, but like even if it had been 2 months earlier, like more time would not necessarily have benefited Kamala Harris. And look, Joe Biden's legacy is going to be defined by the fact that Donald Trump won.
The New York Times says Biden's legacy will forever be defined as a one-term president who set his party on a path to failure. Ouch. Guess we're going to have to start carving his name into Mount Rushmore. We hear Obama's already calling off construction at the Biden Presidential Library. They think this is all on Joe, not them.
Forget about Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, and the others. They need to face the reality of that. And perhaps the real point was maybe Joe Biden should have decided very early that one term was enough and give the party a chance to have a primary election, and maybe the outcome could have been different.
It's not just Obama. It's Kamala, too. People close to Harris think Joe Biden's the singular reason Kamala Harris and Democrats lost. Biden's loyalists were irate after hearing that, clapping back, saying they'd love to have whatever they're drinking. Biden world pointing their fingers at Kamala and Barack. There's no singular reason why we lost, but a big reason is because the Obama advisors publicly encouraged Democratic infighting to push Joe Biden out. Didn't even want Kamala Harris as the nominee, and then signed up as the saviors of the campaign, only to run outdated Obama-era playbooks for a candidate that wasn't Obama. And some Democrats actually agree. They're blaming the loss squarely on Obama's people, saying they're stuck in 2009. One Democrat says the team that's there, it's time for them to retire. We need a whole different strategy. The day of Obama and his geniuses are over. They've been left behind. They're out of touch with the American people. The Democratic Party is out of touch. Obama's campaign manager, David Plouffe, who took the reins of the Harris campaign, has already gone into hiding. He deleted his Twitter account today. And Democrats even have their knives out for George Clooney, who pulled the trigger in the New York Times. One saying, "Someone bring me George Clooney. We need to have a talk." People are blaming Biden. Other people are blaming Barack. Some people are blaming Harris. This is the top Democrat in Philly saying the campaign was just sloppy.
The national campaign, nothing, zero. They had no respect. They had no coordination. They didn't talk. I never even had a conversation with the lady. First time ever. They didn't even do the right thing as far as giving us the resources that we need, and they want to blame us. And now I understand some of their camp was blaming Joe Biden. Can you imagine blaming Joe Biden for her loss? She lost. He didn't lose.
The Harris team's firing back. If there's any immediate takeaway from Philadelphia's turnout this cycle, it's that Chairman Brady's decades-long practice of fleecing campaigns for money to make up for his own lack of fundraising ability or leadership is a worthless endeavor that no future campaign should ever be forced to entertain again. Kamala is accusing the Philly Democratic Party boss of stealing her money. And this is just breaking. Even though she raised $1 billion, she ended the campaign $20 million in debt. Maybe they did fleece her, but insiders say Kamala's campaign chief spent the cash on concerts with celebrities. Beyonce's appearance fee has to be huge. Think about it. It's not just the campaigns fighting with each other. The left is on the warpath against the far left. Bernie Sanders is saying it should come as no great surprise that the Democratic Party, which has abandoned working class people, would find that the working class has abandoned them. Not so fast, Bernie.
I have a concern that the far left is pressuring the party to take policy positions that are deeply unpopular among most Americans. If you're speaking to working class people of color, then you would realize that there was never a mass constituency for a movement like defund the police. And so we should be taking positions that are in line with the majority of Americans.
And they're all screaming at each other.
The next time that some son of a on MSNBC or in the Democratic Party tells you, oh no, be a good boy and girl, be civil, and vote for Democratic leaders, they know what they're doing. Those are the same goddamn liars that told you that Joe Biden was totally fine. If you're on the left, you're a Democratic voter. Wakey, wakey. I need to wake you up out of the hypnosis that you're in. They're lying to you. Why do you think they keep losing? Do you think they keep telling you how smart they are and how they're going to deliver you victories? And all they ever do is deliver loss after loss after loss. So Democratic voters, snap out of it. These guys are obvious liars. Fire them all. Fire them all.
The machine is a wreck. Democrats can only operate as a mob. They can't function fighting like this. Bottom line is this. It didn't matter when Biden got out. The damage was done. He and Harris destroyed the dollar and the border and went crazy with DEI. The country's had it with Biden, Obama, Kamala, the Clintons, Nancy, and Chuck. So what's next for the Democrats? If they're really going to turn the page, who's going to step up and take the throne? One Democrat says, to be determined. I couldn't point to anyone. It's a vacuum. Bring back James Carville. They want to put this guy in charge.
Vice President Harris said she likes to eat Doritos. Yeah, she eats Doritos. You see? Doritos. See, look. Oh, God. He's eating Doritos.
Welcome to Hannity. And tonight, just 48 hours after a landslide victory, the Trump White House is already starting to take shape. Legendary Trump campaign manager Susie Wiles has just been picked as the president's chief of staff. Wiles will make history as the first ever female White House chief of staff. Wait a minute. Mark Cuban said that Donald Trump was afraid of smart, intelligent women, and his campaign manager and first chief of staff is going to be a woman. Anyway, coming up, we're going to bring you exclusive insight into the new incoming Trump administration. But first, I want to commend the Democrats who are using Tuesday's crushing defeat to finally figure out how their own party lost its way. Now, Stephen A. Smith is going to try to do that. He was with the co-hosts of The View, that hard-hitting news show on ABC Disney earlier today. But they weren't particularly interested in his post-game analysis. Parts of it were pretty funny. Take a look.
So you think the Republicans are sort of an extreme fringe party?
No, I don't think that they're an extreme fringe party. I think that they're operating against those they believe are extreme on the left. Yeah. But you had folks on the left that were introducing some things when we got in the whole transgender issue, and they were talking about bathrooms, or they were talking about males transitioning to females and competing against girls in sports and stuff like that. These
That's less than 1% of the population.
I understand that,
but you know what? Adam Aaron during the NFL.
But see, but I think that's where the mistake is made.
Yeah,
you're saying it's ridiculous. I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
But most of the voters out there don't think like that.
Stephen A. Smith will be with us in just a moment. Unfortunately, very few Kamala supporters are like Stephen A. Most on the left simply refuse to think critically about the mistakes in their own party. Instead, they are melting down, they are lashing out, and it's probably going to get worse. Last night, former comedian Jimmy Kimmel threw a hissy fit. He was literally He's upset. He's weeping during the late night show that's not funny, while dramatically vilifying anyone that doesn't agree with his politics. Take a look.
Let's be honest, it was a terrible night last night. It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go, for healthcare, for our climate, for science, for journalism, for justice, for free speech. It was a terrible night for poor people, for the middle class, for seniors who rely on Social Security, for our allies in Ukraine, for NATO, for the truth and democracy and decency. And it was a terrible night for everyone who voted against him. And guess what? It was a bad night for everyone who voted for him, too. You just don't realize it yet.
It's an amazing transformation. Jimmy Kimmel has gone from blackface and girls jumping on trampolines, cucumbers in his pants and asking strange women to touch it, people he doesn't know, to sobbing about an election that didn't go his way. No wonder nobody watches his show. He's not funny. And by the way, Jimmy, the countdown until your cancellation is on officially right now. In fact, it has been years since Americans laughed with Kimmel, Colbert, or any other late-night host. Instead, most Americans, well, they're just laughing at them in clips they see online or that we make fun of here on Fox. That's because no one is watching these hosts anymore. But it's not just the late-night shows on the big networks. Very few Americans care what anyone in the state-run media mob or Hollywood have to say. Now, think about this. They were all against Donald Trump. Did they win? Now, that means most major newspapers in the country, New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, USA Today, the broadcast networks, fake news networks, fake news CNN, MSDNC, NPR, Beverly Hills, their influence, this is the amazing thing. They all were in unison hating Trump. Their influence is officially done. It's gone. It is dead. Now, on this very program in 2007, I said journalism in America is dead. I had no idea how right I really was. Here we are in 2024, and I can officially declare legacy media, Hollywood influence, celebrity influence in America is dead. Now, think about what they did to Donald Trump before his sweeping victory. By the way, he did win the popular vote, too. They accused him of being a Russian agent, called him an illegitimate president. They spread salacious and untrue Russian disinformation about Trump and hookers and golden showers in a hotel in Moscow. They worshipped at the altar of Robert Mueller like a god and used his witch hunt to smear Donald Trump on their media platforms every single hour of every day for 3 straight years. They cheered on fake impeachments. They pushed one hoax after another. They called Trump, his supporters, Nazis, racists, white supremacists, fascists, sexists, dictators. They compared Trump to Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Mussolini. They said he would cause World War III. They blamed him for COVID. They openly fantasized about him going bankrupt from lawsuits and throwing him in jail, by the weaponized DOJ of Harris and Biden or anyone else that, they didn't like and they wanted to cook up charges against. They celebrated when his home was raided for the very things that Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden did. And when his mugshot was posted online, they dreamed about a future locked up at Rikers Island or some other horrific jail, joking about blowing up the White House. Remember that? Or joking about, quote, assassination. Not a funny joke, not a funny comment. And some even expressing disappointment that his would-be assassins were not successful. They told all of you that Trump was evil, a threat to democracy. But on Tuesday, most Americans, but we're just a bunch of garbage, aren't we, didn't give a damn about the narrative, breathlessly pushed day in and day out by the state-run media mob. They went to the polls. They voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump. And that's why the legacy media is now completely powerless. The same with Hollywood, the same with celebrity endorsements. Few Americans care what Julia Roberts or George Clooney, the idiot that he is, think. They don't care what these late-night comics that aren't funny think. That means the 3 broadcast networks, the other cable news channels besides Fox, And after so many lies, so much bias, their credibility is shot. Nobody trusts them, and nobody should trust them ever again. Americans, instead, they have sought out alternative sources of information. Talk radio shows that they like, including mine. We are on 750 stations. The Fox News Channel. Thank God for all of you. We have to earn your trust every day. We don't assume that you're going to be here. We have to earn your trust by giving you news, information, opinion that you're not going to get anywhere else. You know, trusted opinion, opinion that will be proven to be true. We've got to earn your trust. And I'll speak for myself. Nobody in the media mob, state-run media mob, nobody showed you Kamala Harris in her own words and her radicalism and extremism more than I did. Why did I do that? Because people needed to be informed, and the state-run media mob, an extension of the Harris press office, was never going to show that to you. But that won't stop this media mob and these Hollywood and other self-important far-left losers from screaming into the void. It will continue and probably get louder and probably get worse. Take a look.
How are you doing? If you watch the show regularly, I'm guessing you're not doing great. Yeah, me neither.
I don't think that our beloved country, America, knows what it's in for with a fascistic society and dictator.
I'll snap out of it, but I'm in a very, very dark tunnel right now.
It may be that not enough people in this country yet believe in the full equality of women to elect a woman president of the United States.
Latinos in Texas, a district that's 97% Latino, went 75 percentage points for Donald Trump. Why?
Misogyny.
It's on the border.
It's
the border
misogyny.
crisis is on their doorstep. And they were begging people to care about it for years. We need to take some less.
That's what that was.
Well, I'm so proud. I'm so proud of her. I don't think people realize how hard it is to get to where she was.
What will the future hold now that America has just decided that we're going to F around and find out?
Yeah, let's just call people irredeemable, deplorables, bitter Americans that cling to their God, guns, Bibles, and religion. Let's call them garbage, racist, fascist, Nazis, Stalin lovers, and then tell them they're stupid on top of everything else. Oh, and they're sexist and misogynistic and racist. These people are living in their little echo chamber, so closed off from where the rest of the country is, they have no idea how crazy they sound. Part of it makes me laugh. Part of it is really sad. At least Bette Midler deleted her X account after seemingly pledging to drink bleach if Donald Trump wins. I don't know Bette Midler. I don't really like Bette Midler that much. Bette Midler, it's going to be okay. You don't need the bleach. Take good care of yourself. Meanwhile, professors at Harvard, can you believe this? They canceled classes after the election because out of sheer grief, we have snowflakes all over the country. Others are coping with the loss of Joe Biden by the loss of Kamala Harris by throwing Biden under the bus, even though they're the ones that forced him out of the race and dismissing millions of voters that put him in place. You know, what was clearly a coup. Kamala got not one primary vote, and they just ignored the millions of people in their own party. Today, frankly, Joe Biden was all smiles, congratulated Donald Trump, invited him to the White House, thanked Harris for giving it her all. But so far, it doesn't appear that any of the major players inside the Democratic Party are willing or able to change in any meaningful way.
All right. So a Republican has won an election, and you know what that means. Jimmy Carter has to stay alive for 4 more years. It's also time for liberals to tell themselves that they're still right about everything and their hysteria and delusions of persecution are perfectly normal. Yet right now, they're melting like that stick of butter Joy Behar keeps between her thighs to prevent chafing. Case in point, last night, all the other late-night hosts threw a hissy fit. It's too bad Tim Waltz is still grieving, or he could send them all a sack of industrial-strength tampons. Poor Jimmy. True, it was a terrible night for women. children, and for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who cut his lawn.
It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go, for healthcare, for our climate, for science, for journalism, for justice, for free speech. It was a terrible night for poor people, for the middle class, for seniors who rely on Social Security, for our allies in Ukraine, for NATO, for the truth and democracy and decency. And it was a terrible night for everyone who voted against him. And guess what? It was a bad night for everyone who voted for him, too. You just don't realize it yet.
You know what? If I ever cry on TV, it'll be because Maroon 5 put out a new song. But that's it. You big. Now, remember when Johnny Carson cried like a baby over Ronald Reagan getting elected? Yeah, neither do I. And you know why he didn't? Because his wife didn't keep his balls in a Tupperware container next to a box of tofu burgers. But the killer phrase was at the end when Kimmel said, "You just don't realize it." Because you see, he's smarter than you, and he needs you to know that. And his ego can't bear that there's someone out there more famous and more influential than him. I got news for you, Kimmel. The last time you mattered, Bruce Jenner still had a penis. Love you, Bruce. Jimmy's career peaked with busty girls on trampolines. Now the only boob we see is him. He once co-hosted The Man Show. Now he's sobbing like he just watched Steel Magnolias 3 days into his menstrual cycle. Here's another morose multimillionaire.
Hey there. How are you doing? If you watch the show regularly, I'm guessing you're not doing great. Yeah, me neither.
Oh, you're not doing great? You're filthy rich and totally immune from the crap you push on everyone else. By the way, I'm actually doing fine, Stephen. Other than the 48-hour erection I've had since they called Pennsylvania, I'm feeling no pain, bro.
I'm going to see a doctor about that.
Yeah, clap for it. Oh, it's painful. But, Stephen, have you tried maybe just getting over yourself? You've been bashing Trump for 8 years, and all you've done is help put him back in power. After being wrong about something every day and night for 8 years, you might consider trying something new, like, I don't know, comedy. But at least Seth Meyers reveals the source of his anguish: relevance. Trump has it, he doesn't.
We live in an infinite time warp where Donald Trump has always been and will always be the center of the universe. There can be no escape. All hail our powerful and benevolent supreme leader.
Or how about you just do your dumb little comedy show and stop acting like you tried to save the world, but we were too ungrateful to listen to your brilliance. NBC's late night show used to be wacky hijinks until Seth turned it into an hour with your gay therapist. So these fellas are experiencing deep mental pain. And it's not just them. Journalists are now offering tips to deal with their disappointment, frustration, even fear. And I get it. That's normal after any loss. I'm still mad about losing World's Sexiest Man to Johnny Depp. But why would people feel fear? Maybe because their only news sources are constantly telling them Trump's going to turn America into Nazi Germany. But you know who felt actual fear during the Biden administration? People who had to ride the subway or have to buy groceries, or anybody who wants to bang a chick who doesn't have testicles. That's a lot of people. But now, even Kamala admits everything's going to be fine. So much for Trump being Hitler. Turns out she was lying the whole time. They all were. Still, CBS gave handy tips for coping with loss. CNN recommends taking deep breaths, long walks, and please don't suppress your emotions. Usually when they cry this much, they're sharing an elevator with Brian Stelter on Taco Tuesday. And so the media is giving you solutions to the problems they caused. After all, who generated all the anxiety by promising the apocalypse if Trump won? They did. It's like climate hysteria. They banged the drum on it enough, and then kids came down with climate stress. They pretended to cure a disease they cooked up in their own labs. It's like China coming up with a vaccine for COVID. Look at Kimmel and Colbert. They're wrecks because they believe the media. And yet, we're fine because we weren't brainwashed. We know the media's job is to lie, to create anxiety out of proportion to the actual threat or no threat at all. Journalists really only need to give you one tip to manage stress, and that's stop paying attention to journalists. Maybe these late-night losers will stop thinking that the world is ending, because we know under Trump, it's really just beginning. Welcome to tonight's guest! He's like Joe Biden, and that a woman tried to steal his house too, actor, writer, and comedian Jamie Lissow. He got kicked out of the band for taking a stand, musician Winston Marshall. And when her water breaks, it'll be Poland Spring. New York Times bestselling author and Fox News contributor Captain. And he's so big he gets his own electoral vote. New York Times bestselling author, comedian, and former
Oh, I got a clap. Tony Robbins clap. All right.
Jamie, you know, you often are depressed, miserable, lonely, suicidal. You generally think that there's no hope for you. So you might be the perfect person to come to for advice for these people who are currently looking for help. How do you get out of bed every morning knowing that life is worthless?
This makes it harder, this line of questioning. Listen, Greg, I have an opinion.
Yes.
And a joke, unless nobody laughs, and I have two opinions.
Okay.
You pointed it out. They think we're stupid. Kimmel thinks he's smarter than everyone, and and it just, that's exactly what he just said. And to just be full, I guess, transparency, when he was crying, they had just showed him his ratings, and so it wasn't necessarily all about that. Isn't it a little one-sided, though? That by the way, I felt so much better with all the things you described. I do suffer from those. You know what cured them? Tuesday night. Tuesday night cured them. They came out with, it said, like, how to cope with a loss.
Yeah.
What about us? What about how to cope with a win?
Yeah.
What about us? They say deep breathing, and they say have you ever heard name your feelings? Mm-hmm. That's what they say you're supposed to, when you feel something, I made the mistake if I did it while I was talking to my ex-wife. You're supposed to when you're alone. I was like, bitter, you, betrayal. And deep breaths, which I do all the time. I do in through the nose, out through the mouth. Works a little bit better if you have a little cocaine under your nose.
He's really fun at parties, though.
Yes. Winston, what's your perspective on all this as a Brit? You've been smiling since you got here.
I have to say, I know Americans don't like foreigners like me opining on their business, but I have to say, your president is our dictator, so it's quite important to us. When it comes to Kimmel, I mean, Trump said that we're going to overdose on winning. It's already begun. Not only did he take the White House, the popular vote, the Senate, and the House, but now we get to enjoy all these libtards and their floods of tears. It's beautiful.
They should actually be giving us coping tips to deal with them. It's like, how do you deal with people around you falling apart?
Yeah.
Right? You know, like some kind of, like, what is that called? Like,
empathy?
Empathy.
It's hard to win.
It really is hard to win when you have so many losers around you. Kat, doesn't it feel... I know that you were for neither party, but don't you feel like there's been like a weight lifted from you? Like, it does feel... Having a definitive election and getting it back... I was almost flying to work.
Yeah.
I was like flying up 6th Avenue.
Yeah, I'm glad it's over.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad it was definitive. I don't get any joy in seeing other people suffer. unless they're like my ex. But,
what did you make of the late night people?
you know, I think with people who are liberal specifically, I'm somebody who always thinks that there's too much focus on the specific people that are in power and not enough focus on the amount of power that those positions have. And what I've never been able to understand is how these people are melting down so emotionally about how this elected official might impact their lives, but they're the same ones who are arguing for government to have more of an impact on your life.
Right.
And I don't see how you don't draw the connection between those things. It's like, yes, that's why I'm someone that's for small government. In my perfect world, it would hardly matter who wins the presidency because the government wouldn't be so involved in our lives. But these are people who are crying because who have just elected, whose whole philosophy is that we need more government to affect more things in our lives. And I don't see how you can have that emotional reaction and not challenge perhaps the logical conclusion of some of your beliefs.
That makes it makes perfect sense. And originally, you can applaud me.
Yeah,
applaud me. Compliment her. It is the reason why Republicans tended to be the better choice because they were for smaller government, limited government, which is
not small enough for me.
Yeah. You want
Very
non-existent. You want to live on a tiny little island.
She would like one government crossing guard who goes, go ahead.
How did you feel watching Kimmel cry?
One of his tears fell out. Hold on. You know, it's funny how this derangement's working because it only seems to work if you have a camera in front of you. Like, I expected to walk into work, stepping over, crying, to your credit, libtards.
Yes.
Like, oh, excuse me, tear.
Yeah.
There we go. But it wasn't. Everybody went back to their lives.
Yeah.
So apparently the only way this heartbreak works is if you film it or force someone else to film it.
Right.
But to your point about Carson, we never knew his political affiliation because he was there to make everyone laugh. All the late night shows were. All three of them should be fired because it was such a big, murderous election on one side that it should have been a reset. Because when it happened in 20, when he lost and Biden got in, I don't remember us doing an episode on coping skills. There was no line in the audience where I was like, thank you for coming. Thank you. We just like, well, let's keep going. And I believe we made fun of the situation and ourselves. So I always tell people, try to be the bigger man, which is ironic. But
impossible.
In this case, because the poor sportsmanship is coming from TV, normally I would say you can have one lap and smell your flowers, but go ahead and take 4. Because there's nobody going, oh, that's wrong. It's not. You have to be either on Instagram or TikTok to be the outrage. So it's the same thing, and shame on them. Just do your job, Jimmy.
Yeah.
You know, like, I know it's hard to do, but do your job.
Amen.
But you know what? No. Jimmy, keep doing what you're doing, because I love being number one.
Yeah. I think we've destroyed them. All right. Let's move on to the next segment, shall we? Yes, Greg.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.